The Minister of Transport, Óscar Puente, faces up to 7 years in prison over the Adamus tragedy. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another edition of Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez. Today we'll discuss Minister of Transport Óscar Puente, who many of you are interested in. And just look at the huge mess Óscar Puente could get into with the Adamus train accident, which, let's remember, left 46 people dead. A big hug to all those families. He could get in trouble not just for the accident, but also for what's happening now. What's happening during the investigation is that the tracks are being removed secretly without informing the judge who is investigating the case. And this could have legal, criminal, even prison consequences for the Minister of Transport himself, Óscar Puente. Stay until the end of the video because you're going to be amazed, and I know you're going to like it, because what's happening is without a doubt completely outrageous. Firstly, due to poor track maintenance. And then because of the tricks they're pulling at the Ministry of Transport at Addis, supposedly to cover up what happened. So that we Spaniards don't know the truth and those responsible don't face what they've done, or rather, what they haven't done. We're sharing this on screen so you can follow along as usual. There we have a photograph from one of the days in Adamus, in which you can see the Minister of Transport, Óscar Puente, and the Deputy Prime Minister, with María Jesús Montero and Pedro Sánchez there with those expressions, well, wearing the vests, well. The Minister of Transport, mind you, Óscar Puente, is facing 3 years in prison for covering up after Addis made replacements without permission. 42 meters of track where the Adamus train accident happened, which left 46 people dead. Addis only reported the replacement of another 36 meters of rail, which had been previously communicated, as I mentioned before, in relation to maintenance work. In other words, let's see if we can focus on things. 3 years, Óscar Puente could face 3 years for this cover-up charge. But then there are another 4 years, which we will detail later, that the Minister of Transport could face for the accident itself, for the crime of negligent homicide. In total, 7 years, okay? And also, we also need to recap the issue of the tracks. That is, Addis goes ahead and replaces 36 meters of track, previously informing the judge. But then it was discovered that they had replaced an extra 42 meters, making a total of 78, without having previously informed the judge. A real scandal and a real disgrace. The head of the investigating court number 2 in Montoro, Cristina Pastor, has required Addis to clarify and supplement within 5 days the facts and technical reasons for the replacement of the 36-meter rail at kilometer point 317 track 2, identifying the company that supplied the defective rail and the person responsible from the supplying company who reported the defect, as well as the person who advised Addis on the preventive replacement and the workers and technicians from Addis with whom the supplying company and its technical director dealt with the incident, and the worker and or person responsible from Addis who authorized the rail replacement. That is a very clear, very specific, very concrete request, so there are no misunderstandings. In addition, he has urged the Civil Guard of Córdoba to carry out investigative steps to clarify the replacement of the 36-meter-long rail. And he gives Addis 5 days to clarify and supplement the technical reasons that led to the replacement of the other 42 meters of rail on the track. 2. Are those the ones that were not previously reported to the judge? Legal sources we have consulted in Medidas Cautelares and Libertad Digital emphasize that Minister Óscar Puente faces up to 3 years in prison if the judicial investigation confirms that the head of transport gave the order to Addis to remove 42 meters of track where the Adamus tragedy occurred, without previously informing the judicial authority investigating the railway accident. The order from Judge Cristina Pastor, which we have just read, urges Addis and the Civil Guard to clarify and investigate. Why were 42 meters of extra rail replaced without permission in addition to the other 36 meters that were reported? They tell us that it is very well written to clarify the facts. The same sources consulted point out that Article 451 of the Penal Code states that the crime of concealment will be punished with a prison sentence of 6 months to 3 years. That's where the 3 years come from. Whoever, with knowledge of the commission of a crime and without having participated in it as a perpetrator or accomplice, intervenes after its execution in any of the following ways: by hiding, altering, or destroying the body, the effects, or the instruments of a crime to prevent its discovery, or by helping the alleged perpetrators of a crime to evade investigation by the authorities or their agents, or to evade search or arrest. That would be the crime of concealment. Here you have the image of the Adamus tracks, with the damaged ones already being replaced. As I said, 36 meters have been replaced with permission and another 42 meters of tracks without permission. I told you at the beginning, in total, Minister Óscar Puente, if it is proven that he gave the order and that he is the highest authority responsible for the tracks, could face up to 7 years in prison. The other 4 years would be for a charge of negligent homicide. That is, 3 for covering up, for replacing the tracks without notifying the judge, and 4 for the Adamus railway tragedy itself, for a charge of negligent homicide. As mentioned a few weeks ago on Medidas Cautelares with Miguel Ángel Pérez, we already explained it. Óscar Puente could face another 4 years in prison, adding up to 7, for the Adamus railway tragedy for a second alleged charge of negligent homicide resulting in 46 deaths. The paradox of this crime is that sentencing isn't based on the crime's final outcome. Therefore, a maximum sentence of up to 4 years in prison is imposed for negligent homicide, regardless of the final number of victims, since it is not an intentional crime. If the judge in Montoro manages to prove that the Minister of Transport was previously informed about the poor condition of the tracks or the railway infrastructure, and he did not take any action to fix this situation, he would be responsible for the 46 cases of negligent homicide, since his omission would have increased the risk of the accident occurring. All of this, even though he had no intention or will to cause those deaths, and this is the judicial outlook. To me, of course, what seems most scandalous about this whole story is that Pedro Sánchez's government, the Ministry of Transport led by Óscar Puente, using ADIF, while you have a judge, while you have the justice system, precisely investigating what could have happened in that Adamus train accident. They are exploiting the situation with that kind of moral depravity to replace tracks without notifying the judicial authorities who are investigating the events. Why are they replacing tracks? It's obvious. Because that's where the evidence is that the tracks were not in good condition, that the weld was defective, and that's why they want to eliminate any trace so the truth won't be known. So, from an initial alleged crime of negligent homicide resulting in 46 deaths, another consequence arises, which is the crime of cover-up that can carry prison sentences of up to 3 years. You might say this only matters if the investigation reaches Minister of Transport Óscar Puente. Of course. But in the end, this is like that movie, A Few Good Men, right? Who ordered the code red? If the ADIF leader faces 3 years in prison, maybe they'll be honest. He says, yes, I told them to remove the tracks because the Secretary of State for Transport told me to. And who told the Secretary of State? Well, the minister, right? So you can trace it back. Yes, it's difficult, of course, it's complicated, of course. But you have to put things on the table. You have to put things on the table because it's a real scandal. That while a judge is investigating a case, the authorities, in this case the Ministry of Transport with ADIF, are dedicated to sabotaging the investigation. Trying to destroy evidence and cover up the crime, okay? It's a disgrace, and that's why Medidas Cautelares is here to report these events. That's it for this edition of Medidas Cautelares. I hope you liked it. If you liked the video, you already know that you can leave your comments, opinions, and also become members like the Chosen for less than 3 euros a month, or like the Supremes for less than 7 euros a month. You can also contribute via Bizum at 627556370. 627556370. Thank you so much for being there, for leaving your comments and opinions, which I always read carefully, and I never get tired of thanking you. The most important thing, as I always say, is that everyone gets this information because information is power. See you soon.